Survivor Specialist Phil and Alexa are back, and we are joined today by Ian Moorhead, one of our patrons, to talk about episode 8 of Survivor China. The Jean Robert boot episode doesn't get much better than the Jean Robert boot episode. It's so much fun. Ian, thanks for being on here. We can all hear you breathing, so you're gonna have to move the mic a little bit. There we go. But now let's hear how great that voice is. That also goes along with that microphone.
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm glad this is the episode I get to do because it is a good one. So
it very much is. It very much is, and it's, to me, it's one of those that always just goes back to why China's the best season, because you follow up Jamie playing a fake idol with Jean Robert being absolutely blindsided while you're sitting there thinking that James is about to get booted with 2 idols, and then 2 weeks later, James gets booted with 2 idols. Like, it's so crazy though how he, like, it always blows my mind that happens still, because normally that happens. They have to get you. And if you wake up to it and they don't get you the time that you wake up, when you are sleeping, you wake up to it the next time. And they don't get James. And yet he doesn't wake up to the fact that, like, dude, at Final 7, like, they were already thinking about it.
Right. So, and this is one where Jean Robert is like, he has the right idea. Like, Jean Robert's idea is so correct. And then for it to be used later is just, it's so much sweeter.
That's what gets him sent home eventually. I mean, the episode's an hour, but for like the first 45 minutes, Jean Robert's not going home until he tells Todd, hey, we should vote out James. He has 2 idols. And Todd, already knowing that, is like, that's something I want to do. So I want to take credit for that, not you.
Oh, and again, Jean Robert is a punching bag. That is what he is. Like, if you were to rank your Rushmore of fools on Survivor, he is one of them. He's the top 4 fool.
Quote, self-appointed local jerk, actually.
There you go. The self-appointed local jerk. But the thing is, he has good ideas. And people don't really give him the credit. Like, yes, he is a mess. But in terms of his strategy in the game, while it was idiotic at the beginning to just be like, I'm going to be lazy and I'm going to do nothing, his strategy as he moved through the game actually made a lot of sense. And this moment, like when he realizes James has 2 idols, he is spot on with, we need to vote this guy out or he's going to win the whole game. Like, what are you doing? And I guess Todd just probably had a better relationship with James at that point. But man, I could have easily said, if I'm Todd, you know what? Let's get rid of James now and let's keep Jean Robert, who is just going to have to follow me around after this.
Yeah, I think the Todd, like Amanda, like that group, they're in a good position no matter who they get rid of, whether it's Jean Robert or James, because James actually could win. Everybody likes James. And if you keep Jean Robert, like you just said, Phil, he's going to think that he's in charge, but in the end, he's never going to win. But then he gets the best of both worlds where he gets rid of someone who doesn't really matter and gets the idea to get rid of James that probably ultimately ends up helping him win the game.
Yeah.
For some reason in my head, I always relate Jean Robert and Marty together. Jean Robert's just like a dumber version of Marty. I always felt like Marty like knew what he was doing in the game and no one liked him. He was kind of like, he didn't get all the votes like Jean Robert always did, but he got like the brunt of everyone's like hatred during the season. It felt like, although Nicaragua, everyone was just kind of there to be hated, it felt like. But for some reason, I always correlate those 2 in my head.
Yeah, and I guess it kind of makes sense because they're strategists, but they're also not the best strategists. Like, they're kind of lower level strategists.
They're trying.
Yeah. Exactly. And like, while Marty is definitely a better player than Jean Robert, I do think that that's probably why you relate them the way you do. I think it makes sense. I really do. Because yeah, I mean, Jean Robert, the thing is, Jean Robert is a self-proclaimed strategist. He's the bad boy of poker, and he likes to call himself a bad boy, which is really weird. But like, that's just kind of the way he is. And so I could see that being like Marty, mainly because of Marty lying to Fabio about like the chess and all of that.
Yeah.
Like, I think that that's probably where the relationship comes a little bit.
Yeah, just like the excessive, like that lie that doesn't need to be told, but it gets told anyway. And then the person who he tells it to is like, that doesn't make much sense. But of course, in Fabio's case, he was like, okay, Grandmaster of Chess.
Yeah, makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's like playing chess for the sake of playing chess when when you should just be playing checkers at that
Checkers.
point.
Yep.
Yep. And I would say Jean Robert is a checkers player. I would say though Jean Robert is a very good checkers player. So there is that. I would say he's a very good checkers player, but a really bad chess player, because I think he sees the basic moves and he understands why they have to happen, but he's pretty far behind. So he can't be planning 10 chess steps ahead. He needs to be planning, if I jump that one, then I'll be able to double jump next time. That's exciting. Like that's kind of the way it is, because one of my favorite scenes of this entire season is at this reward when they're all sitting around and James, Amanda, and Todd are like, oh, there's an idol? We had no idea. What are you talking about? And Jean Robert is so infatuated with it, and they're sitting there laughing at him.
And he doesn't realize that. I wrote that down. I was like, how does he not realize? Like, if I was reading that clue, I'd be looking up at people every second I could to look at their facial expressions, see if they were really listening. And they are laughing. James can't even keep it in. Todd can barely keep it in. Amanda's doing her best. Yeah, it's kind of sad that he's a poker player and supposed to pick up on cues like that and doesn't pick up on a very obvious visual cue.
They're kind of doing this thing where, like, this isn't going to be the right comparison, but if you're like, if the three of us are hanging out and I propose that we like go on a ski trip together, instead of you guys don't want to join me, like instead of you guys just saying no, you just like keep changing the subject and like making jokes and not actually saying it. Like, because Jean Robert he was like, guys, like look how important this is, and James is like drunk and like falling over, and Amanda's just laughing. Like they can't directly say that they don't care, so they instead just talk about anything else.
Yeah
Absolutely And so, you would think, I think you bring up the best point there. He's a poker player. He's a professional poker player. These aren't professional poker players. If you can't read that room, what room can you read? Like, that should be so easy. Unless maybe he's off because he's also drunk. But I mean, I love the next scene where like he's waking up early in the morning. He's going to get out there early because he just needs to find this immunity idol. It's just in his brain. He needs to find it. And he does go to the right spot. But then again, he just picks up the same thing Jamie picked up. So like, what is he really doing there?
And to me, again, reading the room, you would think other people would be getting, especially Todd, who you've called out as a strategist. You would think Todd is getting up to also look for that idol, or Amanda is getting up to look for the idol, or James is just someone. And he just happens to be the smartest guy in the room, who's the only one who's thought of to get up in the wee hours of the morning and look for it.
I could see him being that kind of guy, though.
Yeah.
Who thinks he's just that much. I mean, I don't think that's that outrageous, that outlandish for Jean Robert. I mean, you do see him in a challenge that really isn't very physical when he gets to be the captain of a team for the reward challenge. He goes, let me think about this, James. And it's like, well, also, like, maybe you should have thought about that, because wouldn't Courtney have been better to put inside the boat? Like, I don't know, man, if James really was the best first pick for this.
Yeah.
Because you get James and you have Jean Robert, and then you do get Amanda, who is lighter. But I mean, if Todd wasn't there at the end, you could have ended up having Denise, James, Amanda, and Jean Robert for a challenge that don't sink inside your boat. That's not very good odds.
And what Eric directly says when he picks Courtney, he directly says Courtney because she's light.
Yeah.
Which, and like, there's a lot of good Courtney content in this episode. And at first I'm like, huh? And then you think about the challenge, and it's like, oh, that she's the perfect pick for this.
The perfect pick for it. And then we get the sad Denise moment, which of course just keeps bringing Denise into our lives.
Tough,
where she's talking about always picked last, and it sucks and whatever. And we do start to see her talking about, do I need to make a move? Should I be going with these other players? And that's what I like about China, is everybody is trying to better position themselves as it goes on. And I don't think we see that in a lot of newer seasons. And I think a lot of newer seasons, people just kind of get complacent, like, fine. But in this season, like, think about this. Frosty doesn't bring his bag to tribal council. That's how in he is with the Fei Long group. And you don't really realize it because it's happening a little bit more behind the scenes. But he is that in with Fei Long that he trusts them enough that it's like, I'm not even going to bring my stuff because I know it's Jean Robert going home tonight and it's not me.
And they tell him about the plan too.
Yeah.
Like Frosty, they don't show them telling everybody, but Frosty he's a part of them.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that obviously comes to fruition in the next episode when him and Courtney kind of have like their little thing,
Dalliance.
whatever you would want to call it. So, I think it's great with Frosty and Eric, how Eric really doesn't know where he stands here, but he's also just trying not to be the biggest target. Like a lot of times I give the invisible person a lot of crap, but I don't really give Eric too much in this season because I feel like he didn't have a choice. He needed PG to be the bigger target, and he needed to let the Fei Long personalities attack each other while he just kind of sat off to the side. He didn't really have a choice but to do that because it was his way of trying to mix it up. But if he comes out very vocally and tries to mix it up, he would have went home this episode if he pushed too hard. I really do believe that.
Yeah, and the thing that sucks kind of about Eric is I couldn't think of a final 3 at this point that he gets to and wins. Mm-hmm. But I think you're right. I think that if he speaks up now, he goes home because Frosty's in with them. I don't even know if he knows that or not, that Frosty's in with them. Mm-hmm. And then PG is like the target now, and she's also kind of the more strategy. I mean, they voted Jamie out because she was more strategic than Eric in the first place. Mm-hmm. And Eric and PG. So, yeah, I think Eric, he has no shot, but he's doing his best to just move along farther in the game, which I agree is more than we see the dud do most of the time.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think that's a good way to put it, the dud where it's like, oh, I can't believe this person is stealing. You don't really feel that way with Eric. And, I mean, you go to season 14 where like you have a bunch of that, this season before. Yeah. And so I think like, it's kind of refreshing, and I think it says a lot about this season. I mean, even Denise, who a lot of people kind of forget from this season, she's strategizing. She's trying to think of things to do, trying to think of ways to get further, and not be the 7th person or the 6th person, be the bottom person in the Fei Long Alliance, which, as we know, she doesn't end up being. So, but you need to think about those kinds of things. And it's always refreshing when people do actually think about it. And man, I really miss when Survivor would show the schoolyard pick'ems because it does create drama. And I don't get why they decide to skip it to give us an extra minute of the challenge that we don't need to see.
And the challenge, I mean, I don't think they've ever brought this challenge back, but I don't know if it was just like this group of people, but this challenge sucked. I mean,
I think it was the grouping.
Because, like, I feel like it could be a cool challenge because, like, Todd was doing a great job of, like, keeping his boat away from them, but Courtney couldn't move her boat at all. It reminded me of the Gabon challenge where they have to, I don't remember what they're on in the water, but they have to, like, sit on something and, like, play. It's kind of like lacrosse, but on the water, and, like, no one can move their paddles except for, like, 2 people. Yeah.
That's the Jackie episode where Jeff's literally like, or no, Kelly. He's like, Kelly is doing nothing, and she's sitting in that little circle thing, literally just sitting there in it. Like she's not even bothering. It's so funny.
Yeah, that's what that reminded me of. This challenge.
When we were just talking a few minutes ago about Courtney was such a good pick. She also wasn't. For what it's worth. Like great pick, like from the onset, but she didn't do anything, and I think Todd did an awesome job, and like Amanda did a decent job. Courtney, where she really shines in challenges is where she has to be lazy, in her own words.
Yeah. Best immunity challenge of all time. And let's just talk about this immunity challenge. Anybody notice anything interesting? That the fact that the heaviest person went out first, the second heaviest person went out second, the third heaviest person went out third, the fourth heaviest person went out fourth, all the way down until the lightest person won the challenge. Was this a little bit easier for lighter people? I mean, even James hangs around for a pretty long time, and he might beat somebody who weighs a little bit less than him, but he's also friggin' riding that thing the entire time, while Courtney literally doesn't move the entire challenge.
She is very zen in that challenge.
She really is. I also, one of the things that made me laugh in the challenge is when John Robert falls off of the dragon, the depth of the water is like nothing. So he just face plants like dead in that puddle. I almost spit out my drink watching. I don't remember that specific scene, but I was just dying laughing at that because 1, it's John Robert, and 2, someone falling into a very shallow puddle is just always kind of funny. So
It's like, of course, he's the one that happened.
yeah.
and it's like a cartoon, like if like Yogi Bear or something was like chasing after somebody and then like he trips and falls, like that's what it looked like, where like all of Jean Robert is still above, but it's like, ooh, that hurt. And like I don't know why they did this in this season, but they have so many challenges like this where it's taking place in like ankle deep mud. And like that can't, like, I've fallen in mud before. Yeah, it doesn't hurt like falling on the ground, but it can't feel great to fall off like on your neck into ankle deep mud. And really a lot of them do this throughout the challenge. It's not just Jean Robert. A lot of them do kind of spill and smash their heads into the ground like he did.
Yeah. Going back to your point about the weight distribution and where they finished in the challenge, I think it was almost like it's like 80% about your weight and 20% about your balance, because Courtney literally did not move. I mean, I know she weighs 9 pounds or what she says, 9 or 7 pounds, but she does not move. It's almost like she didn't even pull the plug for the water to come out. It's like she just sat there.
Well, and that was the thing. Like, so Frosty beats Todd, even though Todd is a smaller guy than Frosty. So Frosty's got some skill there. And the way Frosty saves himself at the end is insane. But it's so blatant that like he has to save himself because his weight is actually maneuvering the tube he's sitting on, whereas Courtney's is literally just sitting, statue, whatever. Like, it's good for Courtney, though. She wins an immunity challenge. How many challenges has Sandra Diaz-Twine won? How many immunity challenges has she won? Courtney's the greatest player of all time.
Yeah, and I think with some of those kind of balancing challenges, if you lose your place, you can kind of wiggle your way back into it. In this one, you automatically just start rocking, and it's really, really difficult to get yourself back on. But Courtney's a challenge beast and got an applause at Tribal Council for it.
It's like a pageant. But you know, I do give credit to the challenge producers and to Survivor for this, for what they did on this season, where they did get very local flavor for the challenges. They were trying to mix it up. Here's the dragon, and they had the dragon in the first episode, and they try to like mix it up with the fireworks and the gear that they wear and all of that. But the one thing is, a lot of these challenges suck. Like, the challenges are really good in terms of like style, but they suck. And that's a reason why we don't see a lot of these challenges ever again. Like, that sitting on that thing, it's not a good challenge. You know, it's a good idea. It's good in thought, but really it's like, ooh, that was too much of an advantage to a lighter person. We can't do this one again. And like, they're just sitting there. And then you have, you know, like that boat one, like you were saying, like, it's not that exciting. And also, we saw the boat one earlier. Oh, wait, no, I'm thinking about, wow, I just watched Pearl Island, so that's unfair. But I'm thinking about when they do the boat one where they ram it down. You know, talking about when Morgan is facing Drake and Rupert is literally just pushing the boat underwater with his oar. So, like, to me, that's a more exciting challenge than this one where it's like dump water from the side. Like, that doesn't do anything for me. That doesn't matter.
I think the reason that I found this challenge somewhat exciting is because we've seen Fiji for 7 seasons now, and they can only run a certain amount of challenges in Fiji. Yeah. So just like the culture aspect behind all these challenges throughout the season, I agree, is pretty cool. But again, not a great challenge.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't need to see them do that like gigantic chopsticks one 9 more times, but I'm glad I saw it once.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, like when Jean Robert and James are yelling at each other. We don't need that. But, you know, Gamer Girl just said, I love the house challenge in Sharia's episode. You know, like, there are cool concepts here. But, you know, they don't always necessarily work. And I forget what the challenges are as we move forward, but I'm sure they're cool. What else? What I'm trying to think of, like, the strategic elements that took place in this episode. I feel like it all really did revolve around Jean Robert, which is so funny because normally a character like Jean Robert gets kind of the buffoon edit when they finally go home. And he didn't get the buffoon edit when he went home in this episode. And I actually think that that's really says a lot about him. You know, he was thinking.
Yeah. And again, he talks to Eric, and Eric, who, like, I know we're using the word dud with the poor guy, but Eric's like, huh, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. And John Rowe's like, okay, this is not helping. So then he calls to James, calls him straight out, and then goes to Todd. So John Robert, like, he's like taking a very aggressive approach, which again, like, probably is the good approach, because if John Robert isn't who he is, James gets flustered, and Todd would probably say, oh my gosh, we should get rid of James. But because he's the local jerk, they just get rid of him instead.
Yeah. I know. And Courtney finally got her wish. She, after all this time, she finally gets what she always wanted, which is Jean Robert to go home. And I love that part where she's like, now they want to get rid of Jean Robert. And like, I do love how Courtney is so petty. And Alexa, you've been living in New York for a while now, so you understand New York petty, Northeast
She's so
petty.
New York.
Northeast petty is just a different kind of petty. Like, and Courtney is just so New York petty. And when they come, she comes walking over, and she's like, I don't care who goes home because I have the immunity idol. And they're like, hey, Courtney, like, are you okay with us getting rid of Jean Robert? And she's like, I don't care. And she like walks away, and I'm like, Courtney, they are offering you your dream. They are offering you everything you ever wanted, and you can't just give them the benefit of the doubt and be excited here. Like, she just had to not be excited. And I just think it's so funny how, she's just so petty. She's like, no, now you guys want me because I'm the pretty girl. Get out of here.
I mean, she has, there are a lot of good lines in this episode, but she has the best one where Jeff is like, Courtney, you going to give up immunity? And she goes, no, screw you guys.
Yeah.
Easy, simple, perfect.
No one even cares either. No one cares.
No one cares.
They're just another Courtney line.
Yeah.
It's like what she said. I think it was last week. That's when she has the line that's like, I think they mistake my tolerance for friendship. They're all like, oh, my good friend Courtney. And she's like, no, legitimately, screw you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the cool thing about Courtney. And like, I was telling my girlfriend, who obviously hasn't seen Heroes Villains, I'm like, wait until you watch like Courtney and Sandra interact together. Because Courtney doesn't really get much screen time in that season, but their interactions are just so fun. And I think that was the first time that Courtney really found somebody she liked. Like, I feel like that's like really like Sandra and Courtney are like just two peas in a pod. I mean, they're pork and beans. It makes sense. Like, there is a reason that they are what they are. And, on this season, there's nobody like Courtney was still kind of like not a trope yet. She wasn't a thing Survivor did all the time. In season 14, you don't have the bitchy New York waitress. Like, you just don't have that. Season 13, you don't have that. Season 12, Danielle maybe is the closest thing to it, but Danielle's really like nowhere near as like zingery as for lack of a better word. But she just is what she is, and it's super entertaining, but also like, it makes it incredibly difficult on this season because now Amanda is starting to come out of her shell. So whoever said I always say Amanda's invisible, she's finally coming out of her shell, which is great. We're finally getting some real Amanda time here. And it's still like, okay, but do we like Amanda more than we like Courtney? And I'm sure there's some people who were like, yeah, of course. But like the personality wise, I just feel like it goes so much more towards Courtney because she is so isolated out there, whereas Amanda has so many like-minded people with her.
Yeah, one of the things I wrote down about Amanda was before the reward challenge, which isn't long. It's kind of just Jean Robert and James being funny at night in the bed. But
so funny.
Amanda finally begins like the streak of episodes where she's like, we should vote James out. And this is like the first, this isn't like the first Amanda strategy we've gotten, but it's the first Amanda born strategy. This isn't coming from Todd. This isn't even, Todd has no input on this at all. It's all Amanda's thoughts. So I think this is like the beginning of Amanda's strategical basically year on Survivor, because she comes on right after for Micronesia. So
I agree.
Amanda Kimmel's strategic renaissance begins.
Yeah. 2.5 years long, basically.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's like a
big start.
Never ending thing. And it's funny how it comes at the expense of James here. And the first time we really hear from her, when her and James end up being aligned for pretty much 3 seasons. You know what I mean? So it's funny how that's kind of the first coming out for her, is talking bad or talking about how she has to get rid of James, when in season 16, she's pretty much saying the exact same thing. And, James goes because of the finger, but she's essentially saying the same thing. And in season 20, she's doing everything she can in her power to keep him around. It's that weird alliance, much like how Sandra and Rupert are, where it's like, oh, we're going to get along so well. And the woman always cuts the guy, and the guy's just like, oh, but we'll work together again next time.
Yeah, I'll still vote for you no matter what.
Yeah.
How's your relationships, man? What are you guys doing out there? Come on. But I'm just saying it's funny how that all works out. Okay. When this aired, the first time, and Ian, this is a question for you. Did you watch this live, or are you watching this? Did you watch this in retrospect?
So the first season that I saw live in full was Fiji. So this was my second season live.
When this episode aired, did you think James was actually going home and that this had worked that Jean Robert's plan had worked?
I was one of the people that never thought James was going home.
Okay.
I always thought he was going to be in the game, especially at this point. I thought like maybe the two idols would catch up to him, but I was still trying to understand the strategy of the game because, Fiji has the idol and the Edgardo move. But other than that, I mean, there's no strategy at all, really.
What are you talking about? It's Fiji's most strategic season in the history of Survivor. What are you talking about?
Speak for yourself, Ian.
Yeah, where is Celestina just screaming?
Listen, I'm not even a Fiji hater just because it was my first season. I'm not Fiji's not my bottom 5 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I always thought James was going to go maybe in like the Denise or like the PG, like the 4th, 5th place area. But yeah, as soon as I heard Jean Robert's name from somebody other than Courtney, I was like, oh, maybe he'll go tonight.
Mm-hmm. It's Alexa. What about you? Because you were also watching this one live, and I don't think I've ever really asked this. But what did you think? Did you think it was going to be James?
I didn't think it was going to be James because it's kind of like what you just said, Ian. Like just last episode or just 2 episodes ago, Todd is vehemently defending him keeping Jean Robert to Courtney, and his reasoning is I just need a number. Jean Robert is going to help me win. So for Todd, or just for Todd and that group to look past that and say, okay, he's dangerous. Now we need to get rid of him. That felt right.
Yeah, it's funny because like at the time I feel like it was like, oh, it's got to be Jean Robert. Like it's not going to be James. Like James is what James is. Like we all love James. But like in a newer season, if this had come like in the 20s instead of at 15, we all would have thought James was going home.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it makes sense now. Like that's the type of move that gets made every single season. And I was the same way. I didn't think that James was going to go home in this episode. I was like, oh, it's just Jean Robert. And I remember watching the final 7 and being like, no way. That ain't going to happen. That's not no. And like still when the votes, I was like, no, that didn't happen.
No.
Stop, Jeff. Do it again. And by the way, happy birthday, Jeff Probst. This is his 59th
Happy birthday, Jeff.
Yeah,
I hope I look like Jeff Probst when I'm 59. Just saying, but yeah. So it's just like it's funny how Survivor has changed. We're back in the day, like I was saying to my girlfriend, so we skipped seasons 8 through 14. We're watching them through. She got through 7, but she doesn't really understand the whole idol thing because we were watching China. We're gonna watch the other seasons, but I had to explain to her. I'm like, this is the first time anybody ever had 2 idols on Survivor. Like this was not something that was happening all the time. And this was the first season where there was no super idol. Like this was the first season where both idols were just this kind of idol. And James having them was so unheard of that while people really shit talk James for what ends up going down, it's kind of crazy because he was kind of inventing the strategy here. Like he didn't have a blueprint, and yeah, it's dumb and all that, but he didn't have a blueprint for playing these. Like he doesn't know if he plays it at final 9. Okay, good. He still has his other one. He gets through final 8 and he plays it at final 7. He wins immunity at final 6. And now he's in the final 5. Like he was making his own blueprint. And while James, I think, is actually an underrated strategist for sure. I do think that people kind of mistake that he's kind of riding coattails, which he is not. I do kind of feel bad for him because he was the first one to do all of this. And then everybody who ever came after him who gets voted out with, an idol or whatever is going on, you say to yourself, okay, like you kind of like, what did you not see coming? Sophie Clark, what did you not see coming in season 40? But here, like, what didn't he see coming? He didn't see season 16 through 40. That's what he didn't see coming. Like, and of all the people to be the first person to have 2 idols in their possession, for it to be James, it defies logic. It doesn't make sense. Idols weren't being found by people like James at this point in Survivor history. So it's crazy.
Is this the first time that there were even 2 idols in the game at the same time?
I think season 14 has the Earl Super Idol and the Yao Man Turtle Idol. I think at the same time. I think. I could be wrong. I haven't watched Fiji in a long time, but I think.
Okay. I was gonna say because I always know that Earl has an idol, but he never really.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't need it.
Yeah.
So, But yeah, I think you're right. I think if James has 2 idols in seasons 20, maybe probably like Philippines, because that's when like Survivor gets like re-put back onto planet Earth.
Yeah.
I think that he goes this episode, not 2 episodes later with the 2 idols. I think people are already.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
right
I think he
now,
plays the idol here. I really do. I think he would have played it in this episode had he seen other episodes, because he was worried going into this. Like, he was concerned he was going to get the votes, and I think he was surprised he got as many as he did. So I think he would have played the idol, but I think he would have known to play the idol, and I actually think it would have been a misplay. But I do think he would have played it almost like what we see Tony and LJ do at the merge episode of Kagyan.
Yeah, and something to think about too that I was thinking about earlier is what happens with this if it's not China's cast, which is very good at the game, and James has 2 idols. Say this is like Fiji's cast and James has 2 idols. They probably don't even think about voting him out. He's probably good till final 6, final 5 with those idols.
Or they think about voting him out, but not in the way that's like double crossing him.
Yeah.
Not in a way that's sneaky. And he would sniff it out and play them.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what do we think about we haven't really talked about PG on this episode at all, but PG coming into this episode was who everybody thought was going to go home in this episode, and in fact PG I think gets 1 vote. I think
she is like not in this episode at all.
She gets Denise's vote. I was just gonna say, what do you mean PG? She's not even in this episode.
And that's what I'm saying. It's kind of funny how we go from Jamie going home and PG was her right-hand woman the entire time, and then Jamie doesn't really. Then PG doesn't really get any screen time, like, at all.
I think this and this happens where like the majority alliance like wins the merge, or like they get their first person out, and then I think they look at Eric and they're not super intimidated, and I think they know that PG just doesn't really have any moves, so they can do what they want, and they know that they'll always have James who's gonna beat PG out in an immunity challenge. So I think that's probably their thought process.
But it's so funny because just like what happened in Survivor the Amazon, don't underestimate these tiny women. Like, don't do it. Don't when they're dying, stomp on them. Like, you have to in Survivor. Like, it's terrible, but it's the whole Sue Hawk. If you were dying of thirst, none of us would give you a drink of water. That's how you have to look at Survivor. And like, PG right now is dying of thirst. Like, put her in the sun and leave her there. Like, get her out of here. But they just don't do it. And it almost bites them. It really does come back to bite them much later in the game, because she gets this close to being able to flip Denise. Because Denise is obviously not happy with the fact that James can't. So PG was that close. And it's it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting how even somebody as good as Todd could overlook, an underrated, smaller female Survivor player who really does have really great strategy, just doesn't necessarily come across all the time.
Yeah, it is pretty shocking that he overestimates her, because I think she is probably, other than Amanda, she's probably the closest player to him in terms of strategy, aggressive gameplay, like viewpoint on the game. I know PG self-admittedly said that she wasn't a huge fan of the show before she came on, and Todd obviously was. But when I think about people who are, like bringing the strategy, or at least trying to, PG is up there.
Yeah, and I think she's probably, after Frosty goes especially, but I think she's probably the best, you could say her or Amanda, is the best challenge competitor overall for the rest of the season. Todd doesn't win an immunity, right? I don't think so.
I don't remember, to be honest. I can never. So, like, in terms of Survivor trivia, when it comes to who won challenges and stuff, after the first 3 seasons, I don't remember any. Yeah, I really don't.
Yeah, I have a feeling he doesn't, but I candidly don't really.
Who wins final immunity? Is it Amanda?
I think so, because PG wins 2 immunities. She's gone. I think this is Courtney. Or no, does Courtney win 2?
I don't think Courtney wins 2.
Okay, she just wins this one.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, because she even says, I won immunity. How many did you win, Jean Robert?
Right.
I think she's saying it just one, but it's pretty fascinating. And I think you're right though, Ian, because everybody always looks at James. He's got muscles. which of these challenges so far have benefited James?
None.
The first one was how many people were at the challenge thing. And the second one is sit on this barrel. And I'm loading the Survivor China wiki. So if anybody else wants to talk, my audio
I'll say something, but I also am curious, does James win an immunity? Because I can't
I don't think he ever wins one.
I don't think he's ever won one. Yeah.
Well, he doesn't make the merge once, maybe twice. He doesn't make the merge twice, I don't think.
So
does he make it in Heroes vs. Villains?
He does make it in fans' favorites, but he doesn't.
That's right.
He goes in Heroes Villains the same episode as Tyson. It's the Tyson hot dog episode.
Oh yeah, he's like 15th place.
Yeah. So I'm looking at it now. Frosty, Courtney, PG, Eric, PG, Amanda. Weird. And that's the thing. And like I remember at the finale, at the last episode of the season or whatever, the reunion, Jeff is like, James, you had 2 idols. You're the biggest guy out here. All you do is win one challenge. Why are you not playing that idol at Final 7? You play that, you win a challenge at Final 6, then you play an idol at Final 5. You're in the Final 4. What are you doing? And I actually don't think James thought he was going to win challenges. I think that's what he was concerned about because, look, I don't remember what the challenges are that they end up winning or that they end up participating. I don't remember the Final 4 challenge of this season or anything like that. But none of these were going James's way. Mm-hmm. Like PG wins the next one. PG and James do not have the same skill set. Sorry, PG. No offense to you, but you are not James, and James is not PG. And so it's just it's funny how like they were starting to kind of go away from physical only challenges at this point and starting to get more into like the puzzle has to end everything. You know, how can we get a puzzle in here, or should we just do endurance in a different setting?
Yeah, I think that's one of the funniest things about the whole season is like everyone, especially John Robert, is like James is the first pick for everything. I mean, he's the best at every challenge, other than the one where they throw stuff at the gladiator challenge. What challenge is James the best at? Frosty for me is far and away the best challenge competitor.
I think James is the other one with James is when they're pushing the balls. What is it, the Schmerges brawl? When they're pushing the balls in
the mud.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean,
where you have to like shove heavy things around.
Yeah, that's James's stuff. Yeah.
But once you get to the individual portion of the game, they don't normally have that. Because then again, he was really good in the challenge where like throw the other men in the water and James literally doesn't get wet in that episode. He doesn't even, nobody's even able to grab him to pull him in with them. He just is standing on the thing and pushing them off. But that doesn't really happen in the individual portion of this season.
No.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Bummer. Alexa, what do you got? You look like you have something you want to say.
No, really the only other notes I have left are like comments or character moments. But I don't remember who said this, but I thought it was good foreshadowing. Someone said, I'm glad you're still around, John Robert. We need a complainer around here.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious. And I was like, I didn't think about that. Because then he's gone. I don't remember who said it though.
I don't either. I do like Jean Robert though. Trying to get in.
James.
I just remember Jean Robert trying to get in bed at night, and Eric's trying to get in bed, and Jean Robert won't move over, and James is yelling at him. He goes, "You got some nuts over there, huh, boy?" And I'm just like, "Oh my god, what James with the one-liners? James is not a hero. He's the best, but he's not a hero.
He's not a hero." So one of my other comments was, did anybody else notice that James referred to Todd as a stewardess?
A stewardess.
Yeah.
I know.
Yes.
He literally called him a stewardess.
Because James was doing the thing. She was doing. Was it Vesepia who did this, or Sean Rector? He's like, "We've got the gravedigger. We've got the model. We've got a stewardess." I was like, "Who's the stewardess?"
And they put the camera on Todd.
I was like, "Oh my god, it's Todd." I loved that. But no, James is absolutely not a hero, but his one-liners are insane.
He's so funny, and like I love him yelling at Jean Robert and be like, "Move so the boy can go to sleep." And I love how he calls everybody a boy.
Everyone.
Like everybody. I mean, except for Todd, who should be called a boy. He's now a stewardess. So
he's a steward.
But everybody else is just, come on, boy, move out of the way, boy. Like, it's so funny. James's way of speaking is hilarious, and it's what makes him so freaking endearing is he does it all with that smile on his face. And you can tell he's just trolling the crap out of Jean Robert.
My favorite James line to date is, if she was a little younger, she'd be in trouble.
Oh yeah, she'd be in trouble.
That like kills me.
Yeah, with that smile on his face, he's just
he's got the cutest smile. That's how he gets away with it.
He's the only person to ever play Survivor with better dimples than Jeff Probst. It's a fact.
Yeah, there it is.
He's got better dimples than Jeff Probst.
Hard to beat those, but
it's hard. It's hard, and James's are all natural. Just saying, Jeff.
Whoa.
Sorry. No
On
offense.
his
Hey, he's
birthday?
59 years old.
On his
okay?
birthday?
He's 59 years old. I get
The
it.
disrespect.
I get it. I remember, what was it I said to Bradley? I'm like, what was your favorite version of Jeff? He goes, pre-Botox Jeff. I was like, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant at all.
Well, that's how you framed it. Okay.
Yeah.
I was asking what kind of hat he wears.
Yeah. Like, what's your favorite Jeff? Like,
speaking of that, this is a Jeff Probst like sun hat, cowboy hat era still.
Oh yeah,
I think
we're
during
in
the
it.
Immunity Challenge, he's wearing that cowboy hat, and I was like, we just don't see that anymore. We just
No.
see the Survivor logo on the classic baseball cap.
Which is a bummer.
The cowboy hat and like at the reunion, the like tribal design shirts. Like we've been robbed.
Oh yeah, the season 7 reunion shirt he wears is like my dad wouldn't have worn that
It's
in the
horrifying.
80s. Like, and he was like a Guido. There's no way he would have worn that thing. So it's like, what am I looking at, Jeffrey? Come on. And I do like in this episode, I think Courtney does do the "shut up, Jeffrey" or something like that. It's like one
During
of the
the
first
challenge.
Yeah, it's the first time she kind of mouths off back to Jeff, which becomes a trend pretty much throughout the rest of Survivor,
Yeah.
especially in Heroes Villains, when she's like, all right, Jeff, thanks. And then she starts calling him Jeffy Pop. If anybody remembers
Love
that,
it.
that's my favorite nickname, but Jeffy Pop. Yeah, I don't really have much more notes for this one. I mean, I love that it's the Genre Bear Boot episode. And I love that a lot of the episodes, see, I always find it fascinating. They do this in back-to-back episodes of China, and it works. When in the newer school seasons, it doesn't really work. But in back-to-back episodes of this season, we know that the plan that the person who should be going home has isn't going to work. We know Jamie's plan in last episode isn't going to work, and we know that Genre Bear's plan in this episode isn't going to work, at least from the standpoint of finding an idol and doing all of those things. Yeah. We know it's not going to work, and yet it still works on the TV. Nowadays, they couldn't do an episode like this. They would have to throw so many different, oh, well, what if I find an extra vote? Or, oh, what if I do this? And it would almost become too complicated. And in this one, they're just like, this is what Genre Bear's trying to do. And you're kind of seeing it from his point of view. And his interaction with James, where like he's trying to bully James, and James is just like, if I find an idol, I'll tell you. And then he literally paddles away and leaves Genre Bear sitting in the water. One of my favorite shots. It's like, I'm leaving you here. You're not allowed to come back. They wouldn't do that in the newer seasons, I feel like, because it would almost take away what they would think is the suspense of Tribal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's my thoughts. That's
one more note I did have was before Tribal, before like the whole thing of let's vote out Genre Bear goes down, James is talking to Genre Bear, and he's like, why would I work with you? You're Genre Bear. I would be the dumbest player in Survivor. And then 3 episodes later, he becomes the dummest player of Survivor for all but 5 months.
I missed that for 5 months.
Until Eric gives up his necklace.
I did see that. I didn't actually take notes for this episode, but that's a good point. I loved when he said that. I was like, and I really wanted to say like out loud, like, oh, and he becomes the dumbest, but I couldn't say it because
no, you can't.
I can't say anything out loud. And Alexa gets like the final 9 predictions every time, and they have James winning, so let's just put it that way. Anyway,
the last note that I have is Eric looks at Jamie and it was like wholesome yet painfully in love. She looks unbelievable.
Yeah,
and this is
very early 2000s hairstyle with the poof.
Yeah, and this is like another thing you miss. Like I remember watching with my family, and we loved seeing the Jerry walk out, and it's like, oh my god, that's what they look like.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, like Eric just looked at her like that. That's something you miss, and that, you know, especially noteworthy considering that they are presently married.
Yeah, and especially like now we just see the people too much. You know what I mean? Like we see them all the time. Like we know by the time like Kelly Wentworth gets voted out, we already have seen Kelly Wentworth later. You know, like we already like
Sure.
So you have like it's like an oversaturation of it. Whereas at that time, I mean, nobody knew what PG looked like outside of the game unless you remembered what she looked like in episode 1, which nobody remembered.
No.
So like you go from like this decrepit creature to now here she is like all dolled up with her poof in the middle, whatever they call that. Alexa, what is that called?
A bump? I am not the right person to ask.
You didn't do bumps all the time?
I sure didn't.
That sounds like a drug question. All right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yep, yeah. I'm gonna steer away from that one.
You're not blowing bumps, Alexa. All right. Anyway,
yeah, that's what the kids call it.
That's what the kids call it. No, so yeah, that's a good point. And I think like, yeah, that's like another thing like in Survivor that's just kind of like lost its like appeal nowadays because we see these people all the time. We know what they all look like. And also, you know, half the time they don't even look all that much different anymore. At least this doesn't feel like they look all that much different. For some reason, they keep putting guys on the show who can't grow facial hair, and that really bothers me. But that's a side note.
And social media too. People just like look up the castaways and find them on Instagram before they even get voted out. And
you know exactly what they look like. I mean, I remember the Kelly Wentworth post Cambodia picture. I was like, oh, she's my winner pick now.
Yep, she is a skeleton.
Yeah, she literally doesn't have a face, but whatever. Or maybe her boyfriend at the time was just really, really jacked.
Either or.
He's not. He is, but he's not. He's not that jacked. He's not jacked enough to make Kelly Wentworth look like she weighs 94 pounds or whatever the hell. But yeah, I don't really have anything else on this one. We're going to be doing this again for next week, of course. You know, coming in strong into the second week of November here, talking about probably one of the more boring episodes of the show. From what I remember, maybe I'm wrong, but from one of the more boring episodes of this season, pretty predictable boot. But still, it's China, and maybe I'll be surprised. Maybe I forgot, but that's what I have to say about that. Alexa, you want to say anything to Ian before we let him go to sleep? Ian, you're on the East Coast, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm up late anyway, though, so this is no biggie.
This is no different.
Yeah.
No, I mean, this is all I had too. Ian, did you have any final thoughts on this episode before I talk in a circle for 2 minutes?
I do not. Just want to thank you guys for having me on. I've only been a patron for probably like 4 months now, so it's nice to interact with everybody. So,
well, you joined at the right. Well, you technically joined at the wrong time, but it turned out to be the right time because there's no Survivor.
I'm
but
loving
like,
it, so.
There's been so much going on, so I feel like you're getting a good experience. So
yeah, I definitely am.
That's good. You also came in at the time where we actually started putting a lot of stuff on our Patreon, which is about to disappear for November because my life's over. So see ya, everybody. No, Alexa, tell everybody what's going on.
So we are going to continue our Amazing Race and Survivor China recaps. We're going to keep these going on Wednesdays. So Amazing Race was supposed to be 2 hours this week. I think it's only going to be 1 hour next week. So we're going to recap that at 9 Eastern right after the episode and continue our Survivor China episode 9 recap right after that. As I mentioned about 45 minutes ago, I am leaving Phil because Phil is busy. So I am leaving Phil. I'm going to be doing Australian Survivor Season 2 recaps with McKenna Feeney. Neither of us have ever watched any Australian or international Survivor before, so this is going to be new for both of us. So for those of you who have been asking us to watch that, we are finally hopping on the train, but we're never going to watch Big Brother. You guys know where to find us. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can become a patron at patreon.com/Survivor Specialists, and we will see you all next week. Thanks again, Ian, for coming on.
Thanks, Ian, for being here.
No problem.